Alright, hello everyone, welcome to this video on machine learning. In the last video, we talked about the course outcome of this course, and then we talked about the syllabus. We had a overview of the syllabus, then I gave you the definition of what is data, and then we saw examples of data, several examples, and then I showed you a few examples of machine learning that were done on this data that we saw. All right. We did not see in depth what algorithm was used to do this analysis, to do this machine learning examples. But then by the end of this course, once we learn all this algorithm in this course and we learn how to apply this algorithm, I would hope that you would be able to do this analysis that were shown to you in the last video. Okay, with that, in this video we are going to look at two topics. One is this: what is well-posed machine learning, what is well-posed learning problem, and then how to go ahead and design a learning problem. All right, so let us look at this definition. A world is said to learn from experience E with respect to some class of task T and performance measure P if its performance at task T as measured by P improves with experience E. Alright, so that's quite a mouthful. Okay, and it might be confusing, but then I will explain. It's a very simple thing. Okay, this definition, first of all, is the definition of machine learning. Alright, this is what is machine learning. So, if someone asks you what does it mean for a machine to learn, researchers around the world, academics and researchers around the world, accept this as the standard definition of what it means for a machine to learn. Alright, this definition was given in the book Machine Learning by Tom Mitchell. This book is one of the two standard textbooks for your course. So, this definition is from that book, and this is the standard definition. This is accepted by people all across the world. So, you will find this everywhere. Alright, so let us try to understand what it means. A computer program is said to learn. Okay, right. Stop. I'm sorry. A computer program is said to learn from experience E with respect to some class T and performance measure P. Okay, so we have three things: experience E, some task T, and some performance measure P. Alright, then when is the computer program said to learn? A computer program is said to learn if its performance at task T, alright, as measured by P, improves with experience E. Okay, let me explain this with an example. Say I want to uh, create a self-driving car. Okay, so I am going to feed it some data using which the self-driving car is going to learn to drive. So I am going to say give it photos of the environment plus action by human. Okay, so what is the data that I am going to give to the uh, self-driving car software? I am going to give it that this is a photo at time t, and this photo was taken at time t, and at that time the human took this action. Okay, so these two data together would be given to my self-driving car software. So I will have photo and I will have action by human. Alright, this is my data. So this is going to be my experience using which I am going to learn, and by I mean the software. Alright, what is the task? Task is driving car. Alright, what is the performance measure? Performance measure would be number of mistakes while driving. Okay, observed by some human. Alright, so these are the three things that you need in the definition. Experience, E. What is the experience? Experience is the data that is going to come in, right? That is one way of looking at experience. So as you look at more and more data, your experience is going to grow. Okay, what is the task? There should be some task. Here the task is driving car. In some example, maybe your task could be to classify whether it's a picture of a dog or it's a picture of a cat. Okay, in some other task it would be say to say what is the expected house rent of this house, of some house. Okay, so that would be your task, right? So your algorithm is going to do some task. My algorithm is going to drive an autonomous car, okay, a self-driving car. Then I have this performance measure. So say I have two algorithm, I have written two algorithm, and I want to uh, see which of these two algorithm is doing good. Okay, which of these two algorithm is better. So there should be some numerical value that I would be able to look at, and that should tell me which of these two algorithm is better, or it should tell me, given one algorithm, this numerical value should tell me how well is this algorithm performing on this data. Okay, now this is important. I need one numerical value. Sometimes it may so happen that I am going to look at more than one value, but if I can have one value, then it is better. Say I have something called accuracy. In case I am trying to find out the pictures of cats and dogs, I can look at accuracy. Okay, how accurately am I predicting? What is the percentage of error that I have? I have made 100 prediction till now. I have looked at 100 unlabeled pictures of cats and dogs, and then I am saying this is a cat, this is a dog. That is something that I am doing. So out of this 100, maybe I have uh, correctly identified 90 pictures, so I would have an accuracy of 90%. So is this good? So if some other system performs 90 has an accuracy of 95%, then that would be better. So this is how we can compare. This accuracy is an example of performance measure. Okay, in our case, in our self-driving car software, we are going to have this performance measure, that is the number of mistakes that the software makes when driving the car. So where are we going to get the number of mistakes? This will be observed by some human. Okay, so some human is going to sit with pen and paper on the car as the car is driving around, and whenever the human thinks that some mistakes has been made, okay, then human will note it down. Okay, and of course when experimenting with self-driving car, there will always be a human behind the steering wheel who can suddenly brake the car and take control, right? We cannot have a software run car without any uh, high high accuracy running around on road and killing people, right? So yeah, these are the three things that we have. What does this definition tell us? This definition tells us that as we have more and more experience, as we have more and more data, all right, then if my software performance, if the performance of my software, the speed increases as I look at more and more data, right? So increases in doing what? In doing this task T, in driving car. So as I look at more and more data, as I gain more and more experience, my performance in doing this task, my performance, that is this performance that we talked about, number of mistakes while driving, should decrease in this case. My performance should increase. This should be probably one by number of mistakes to be consistent with the definition. So my performance should increase, right? I should make less and less mistakes in doing what? In doing this task. So this is what this definition is giving us. Okay. So although this definition has a lot of letters mixed into it, but this is essentially what this says, that in doing some task T, as I gain more and more experience E, my performance should improve. My performance given by P. All right. So yeah. If this happens, if with experience my performance improve, if this fact is true for my software, then I can say that my software is learning, that the software that I have created is a machine learning software. Alright, so a computer program is said to learn from experience E with respect to some class T, class of task T, and performance measure P if its performance at task T as measured by P improves with experience E. Alright, so in general, what do we have to do? In order to have a well-defined learning problem, okay, we must find out three features. What is the task that needs to be done? What is the measure, performance measure that we are going to try to improve? And what is the experience? How will the software gain the experience? Let us look at three examples of well-defined learning problem. The first example is a checkers learning problem. Okay, a checker is a board game. In that board game, you have 8 by 8 uh, these squares like a chessboard. Okay, and then you have pieces like, so this is the 8 by 8. Okay, pardon my drawing. Okay, 8 by 8 board. I have pieces here uh, that can move diagonally but not straight, and then once it reaches the end, it will gain a something called a crown. After that, it can move straight as well. Your aim is to win the game. Okay, so a checkers is a board game. What is So we are going to create a software that is going to learn how to play checkers. So what is the task over here? The task is playing the game. Okay, what is the performance measure? How many games has it won? Okay, if it has won played 100 games, then say it has won 90 games. This is better than a system that has won 80 out of 100 games, right? So the percentage of games that is won against opponents, that is the performance measure. We will try to improve this. Okay, and what is the experience? From where is the experience going to come? The experience is going to come by playing practice games against itself. Okay, so the computer is going to simulate this gameplay, and using this simulation the computer is going to gain the experience as uh, so the well post learning problem. When will we say that our checkers learning program is learning? We will say that it is learning if, as it plays more and more games, the performance measure, that is it, the number of games won should increase. Say it has played 1,000 game against itself and it is winning 90% of the games. I would expect that when it plays 10,000 games against itself, it should have something greater than 90% performance. Okay, so if after playing 10,000 games, its performance degrades, that is not learning from this experience. Okay, so this is what we have. An example of a software that is going to play checkers. Another example would be a handwriting recognition learning problem. Here the task is to recognize and classify handwritten words within images. So image will be given, and then in that image we have to find out the words that are in the image. So image of a paper in which I have written text, and then my software should tell me what are the written words. So this is a OCR software, optical character recognition. Essentially OCR recognizes character, but here we are recognizing words. Alright, so this is the task is to recognize and classify handwritten words in images. What is the performance measure? Performance measure is going to be the percentage of words that are correctly classified. Alright, so yeah, nothing to explain much here. What is the training experience? It is a database of handwritten words with given classification. So yeah, it is a database in that I will have lots of pictures, say 1.jpg, and I will have this label data. What is the words in this picture? Okay, so this is what I have. Your experience is going to come through database, okay, or data set. And then this is something that we already talked about, a robot learning, driving learning problem. So the task is to drive on a public 4-lane highway using vision sensors, using camera. So performance measure is average distance travel before an error. Okay, so how much distance is traveled before encountering an error, and what is the training experience? So training experience will be a sequence of image and steering commands recorded while observing a human driver. So when a human drives around, uh, given this image, what was the action that the human took? Okay, so this is the third example of a well posed learning problem. So yeah, you may have noticed by now some pattern in uh, this well posed learning problem. You have to find out what is the task, you have to find out what is the performance measurement, and you have to find out what is the experience. How is it going to gain experience? Alright. So let us say we are talking about classifying flowers using the IRIS dataset. Okay, you all know what is the IRIS dataset. It is a dataset in which we have. Hold on. So essentially, IRIS dataset. Let me show you IRIS dataset. Okay, this is the example of IRIS dataset. Here we have five columns. Right. One is the sepal length, one is sepal width, petal length, petal width. This is called the petal of the iris flower. This is called the sepal of the iris flower. This is called the petal of the iris flower. So this is the petal length. This is the petal width. This is the sepal length, and this is the sepal width. All right. In this picture. So one scientist, Fisher, most probably his name is Fisher. I forgot the name. He has recorded 150 total instances, 150 different flowers. He has gone to 150 different flowers. These flowers are three species of the Iris genus. One is Iris versicolor, Iris setosa, and then we have Iris virginica. So three different flowers, three different species belonging to the Iris genus. All right. So this person has recorded all this that the sepal length of the first flower is 5.1 centimeter, sepal width is 3.5 centimeters, the petal length is 1.4 centimeter, petal width is 0.2 centimeter, and what is the class level? Class level is setosa. Okay, so this is something that is there in the data set. Now we are going to use this data set at a later point of time, not today. But then we are going to use this data set to do what? We will learn from this data set and then given some new measurement of a different flower. Okay, say I have been given a flower with sepal length equal to 5.8, sepal width equal to 3.1, petal length equal to 4.9, and petal width equal to 1.9. I should be able to say what is the species of the flower. Okay, is it Iris versicolor? Is it setosa? Is it virginica? So this is what I have. This is something that we are going to do when we look at this classification problem. Okay, this is a form of classification. There is three classes. This is one, this is two, and this is three. And from these three classes, we are going to identify to which of these three classes my new sample belongs to. All right. So let us go back to this definition of well-posed learning problem. In that problem, what is the task? Task is to classify. Okay, classify these flowers into these three classes: Setosa, Virginica, Versicolor. What is the performance measurement? probably we are going to look at out of the uh, classification that I have done. If I have looked at 100 unknown flowers, out of this I have identified 90 correctly, then this is my accuracy. So accuracy is one factor. Okay, is the performance measure that I am going to improve, and then what is the experience? Where is the experience going to come from? It is going to come from the Fisher's data set. Okay, the data set that we saw. Okay, we did not see the entire data set, but then out of the entire data set, we saw a few rows. Okay, so yeah, this is how we can write down the iris flower classification problem in terms of this well post learning problem. Okay, so yeah, this is something that we have. Now let us pick this up, this checkers learning problem once again, and we are going to design a learning system using this checkers learning problem. Okay, so what is the task? Once again, the task is to play checkers. What is the performance measure? Percentage of games won. And what is the training experience? It is going to learn by playing against itself. Okay, so yeah, this is something that we have. Now in designing this learning experience, we are going to go through four steps. First, we are going to find out how to get this training experience. Okay. Then we are going to find out how to find out something called target function. Then how to represent this target function. And finally, how to learn. Okay, so we will go through these four steps in order to create a system that is going to learn how to play checkers. Now this is going to be a high level overview. Okay, we are not actually going to create a game today in today's class. We are not actually going to write the program. We are just going to discuss what is the thought process that we have to go through in order to create such a system. Okay, now first we have to choose the training experience. There are three important attributes of the training experience. One is whether we are given a direct or indirect feedback, okay, regarding the choices made in the performance system. So we will talk about this. Then the degree up to which the learner controls the sequence of training example, and how well the training experience represent the distribution of examples over which the system performance will be measured. All right. Final system performance P will be measured. So the first thing essentially says this. Uh, Say I am going to make a game, right? I am going to get some use some database to learn. Okay, data set using which I can learn. So what is the data set going to be? Say I am going to play a game. So in my decision, I have made this decision that my software is going to learn by playing games. So it will start with some board, say B1 board state, and then it will make a move and reach some other board state, say B2, then some other move state, say B3. Okay, so on and so forth until it will either win or lose. So there is a sequence of both states through which it will go, and then ultimately whether I lose or win when I play this sequence of both states. So this might be one form of data, and the other form of data might be given a board state. Okay, so what is the move that I should make on this board state? All right. This kind of data, if it is given to me, I would say that I have direct data. So from given a board state, I can directly see what is the move that I have to make. Here my data is kind of indirect. Here I have given a sequence, and then I am given whether I win or lose. So I make some move here. This was M1, say this is M2, and I made a sequence of moves. So it is very difficult to find out which of these moves contribute how much to my winning, whether each of them is a good move or not. We will discuss this in the next slide. In this slide, we are going to talk about this direct and indirect training experience. Okay. Direct training experience consists of individual checkerboard states and the correct move for each. So yeah, as we already discussed, in direct, what will happen? We will have this board state, and given some board state. Okay, what is the move that I have to make in this board state? Right? This is direct training experience. But then this is not something that we would be able to do, right? We don't have this database of given this board, and by board state I mean this, right? Uh, Given this board, my one piece was here, another piece was say here, okay, and another piece was say here. Then what do I do? I take this, say this is black. I take this piece and I move this piece to here. So I reach from that board state to this board state. This was here. This is gone now, and this. Okay. So this would be say board state one. This is a board state two, and this is one move that I made. Let this move be called M1. Okay, so in direct trading experience, what would I have? Given this board state B1, I should make move M1. Okay, so this is something that would be there in direct. Given a board state, what is the move that I should make? On the other hand, in indirect, what is going to happen is in indirect, I will have one board state. Okay, and from that the computer is going to automatically make some choice and arrive at a different board state, and then from that it is going to arrive at another board state. Okay, say this is move M1 done by player 1, simulated player 1. This is say M2 played by simulated player 2. Alright, so again M3 played by player 1, and so on. So using this I will go from board state to board state, and finally I will reach a point where I either win, lose, or have a draw. Okay, so here this is called a indirect training experience. Okay, so indirect information consists of the move sequences and final outcome of the various games played. So this move sequences, from this state using this move I go to this state, from B1 using move M1 I go to B2, from B2 using move M2 I go to B3. So this sequence of move M1, M2, M3 is going to give me a this how this game is played, and then after this sequence I have this information of whether what is the final outcome, whether I won or lost, or the game resulted in a draw. Alright, so this is what I have. This is the indirect training experience. Alright, the information about the correctness of specific move early in the game may be inferred indirectly from the fact that the game was eventually won or lost. So this M1, is it a good move? That is a question that now I have to figure out, right? So ultimately my program is going to do what? My program, given some board state, once it starts playing, my program will be given some board state. Say this is the board state that is given to my program will have to give me the output. What is the move that I have to make? Do I make move M1 or do I make move M2? All right, so there will be different kind of moves, valid legal moves. Out of these legal moves, I have to choose one move. So later on, my program has to do this. Given some board state, I have to make some move, right? So yeah. Now see, this move M1 is played by the program at the beginning of the game. Now, based on whether I lost the game or won the game or it resulted in a draw, I have to decide whether this move M1 is a good move or a bad move. Okay, that is problem 1. Okay, then problem 2 is credit assignment. Okay, so there are lots of moves that were made by player 1 and player 2, say M1, M2, M3. So all these moves resulted ultimately at the end that I won the game or I lost the game or it was a draw. So if I won the game, say, then how much credit should I give to move M2 and how much should I give to M1? So this is this problem of credit assignment. Okay. So there will be lots of moves. How much credit for the ultimate result should go to each of these moves? Okay. Then there is this one more problem regarding credit assignment. It is that say I made some very good moves at the beginning. Okay. And then towards the end of the game, I started making bad moves. So I ultimately would have lost the game if I made bad moves towards the end of the game. But then, if I just use this information that I lost the game, what will happen is that I will give bad scores to the good moves that I made at the beginning of the game. Okay, so yeah, this is one more difficulty with credit assignment. We have three things that are written over here. One is that based on this outcome, I have to give score to this uh, moves. Okay, and then given this sequence of moves, I have to give credit. How much credit do each of these uh, move actually get? Right. So if I make 100 moves in playing this game, so uh, all these moves are not going to be equally useful in ultimately whether I win or lose. Okay, some moves were better, some moves were say even bad. Okay, it's maybe those were bad moves. So how much credit do I give to each of these moves? So this credit assignment is going to be a issue that we have to think about. Then even in credit assignment, there is this issue of if I make good moves at the beginning and bad moves at the end, I am going to lose the game. So a normal credit assignment would do what? These good moves at the beginning would also be given bad scores. Okay. So this is one more problem that we need to worry about. So this is all about direct and indirect trading examples. Next, we are going to talk about how much uh, do the learner have control over the data that is going to come in. So, is it going to be provided by a teacher? Okay, learner is the software, teacher is the person who is giving the data in this scenario. So, a teacher might give this. A teacher might give this database of given this board state, you have to make this move. Okay, and then given another board state, so this is B1, make move M3. Given board state B4, make move M2. Okay, so what do I have here? I have this board state, okay, and I have this move. Given some board state, what is the move that I am going to make? Right? So this would be this could be one way of giving experience to my learning problem, okay, learning system. So this is one way. In the other way, other technique, it would have this. Uh, the board would run program on its own. It will generate these boards on its own, and it would try to learn on its own. But then, at some time, it may so happen that the program, okay, this learning system that we are designing, it is going to have some confusion. Okay, say there are three moves that are possible, and each of them is getting say 33% certainty I have to make this, 34% certainty I have to make this, and 33% certainty I have to make this. Say this does not add up to 100, whatever. Okay, okay, this adds up to 100. So now see, the program is going to be confused. Which of these three moves should I take? So what is it going to do? It is going to ask uh, the teacher. Okay. So it will stop learning, and it is going to display some screen that out of these three moves, what should I take? Which move should I take? So uh, it is going to ask the teacher. Then finally, the last situation could be this. This is the one that we will go through. Uh, it will have complete control over the board states and training classification, as it does by playing against itself with no teacher present. So, in the third style of playing, what is it going to do? It is going to have complete control over the board state. That means it is going to play on its own, it is going to experiment on its own, it is going to make moves, these legal moves that it can make at some point of time, and it will play against itself. There is no human involved in the loop. Okay, by simulating this game, by playing this game on itself, all right, it is going to learn how to play the game. Okay, through experience. So it is going to gain the experience. How it is going to gain the experience? By playing against itself with no human involvement. Okay, with no teacher present. Now in this given this situation, the learner, this software, can choose to do one thing. Say it knows that if I make this move from board state say Bn to board state Bm, it may choose to make move M say I. Okay, so from this to this, using this move, uh, it can go. Okay, so the software has learned that MI is a very good move that I should make when I reach both state BN. Now, what can the software choose to do is this: when it sees BN in the future, it can make some minor modification to MI. This base move that it can make, it can make some minor modification and see for itself that what would happen if I make this minor modification. Okay, so that is some variation that it can try uh, in order to gain more experience, right? So yeah, this is one more way of learning. So these actually have names. Okay, this is called supervised learning. This is called active learning, in fact, and this is called, the final one is called reinforcement learning. Uh, some would say this is unsupervised learning, but then in reinforcement learning, this is something that is going to happen. Okay, it is going to play against itself in order to learn how is it doing. Hold on. Okay, sorry for the interruption. All right. So yeah, this is reinforcement learning, and we will see how reinforcement learning would be used in order to design such a game playing system. Right. Later on, when we reach, I believe, module 5. Okay. Then this distribution of training and testing example. This is very important. See, what happens is that let me give a real life example of what happened once. Okay. So some people, they were trying to design a system that would take pictures of trucks and pictures of cars. Okay. Pictures of trucks and pictures of cars, and it is going to tell us, given this picture, whether this is a picture of a truck or a picture of a car. Okay, simple software, a simple machine learning problem, and it has to do this classification. Now, what happened was that when training this program, lots of pictures with trucks were taken, and lots of pictures of cars were taken and fed to this machine learning system and learning system. Now, it so happened that the pictures of trucks were taken during night. Okay, and pictures of cars were taken during day. Now what happened was that the machine learning system, it just learned how to differentiate between day and night. Okay, so given this training data, when we took this training, when those people they took this training data, they saw that the machine learning system was doing very good on this training data. So in this training example, the machine learning system was doing really good because the pictures of cars and the pictures of trucks, it was able to classify very properly. But then later on, when this system was deployed on the road, it was not able to classify correctly. In fact, whenever it saw a picture of a truck during the day, it would say that the picture is of a uh, car, and whenever it saw a car during the night, it would say that the picture is of a truck. So the machine learning system learned what? It learned to differentiate between night and day. Whenever there was a picture of a picture taken at night, it would say this is the picture of a truck. Whenever there was a picture taken at day, it would say it is the picture of a car. Okay, so this is a big error, right? This should never be. Now, what is the problem because of which this error was there? The problem was because in our training example, we had data from only night. Okay, but in our testing environment, we have data that is both from night and day. Okay, so this distribution of pictures in the training and testing data was not same. All right, so this is one big problem that is there. Okay, your training and testing data have to be from the same data set. Now, in general, learning is most reliable when the training example follow a distribution similar to that of future test example. So had there been pictures of trucks and cars both from day and night, this problem would not have arisen. So it would have been reliable had the distribution of tests and this training data had been the same. But here the distribution was not same. Here we had different kind of testing data. It had day and night. When my training data was different, it had only night. So the distribution was not same. Okay. Learning is most reliable when the training example follow a distribution similar to that of test example. So if its training example consists only of game in our system that we are going to create a software that is going to play checkers. So if the training experience consists only of games played against itself, then this might not fully represent the distribution of situation over which it will be tested later. So what does this mean is that my computer is going to play these games thinking that the opponent is going to be always very logical, very calculating, right? It is not going to make any move that is going to harm the game. But then people who have played chess, people who have played checkers, they know that sometimes you have to make some sacrifices, right, in order to have a better game later on. So the computer may not have thought about it. The computer may not have seen this trick, this human trick that the human player is going to make. Okay, the human player may follow some intuition using which it will play this game in a way that the computer may not have anticipated during the training process. So what is it going to do? It is going to have a very different training distribution and a different test distribution. So the training distribution comes, training data, this training example is going to come from what? It is going to come from playing games against itself, right? By playing against computer. Okay. But on the other hand, this testing is going to be done when playing against human. So the computer is going to play with a different, for lack of a better word, it is going to play with a different mindset. But then human is going to play with a different mindset, right? So my training distribution and my testing distribution are going to be different. The word distribution, of course, comes from probability distribution, right? So yeah, this is point 2. Then in point 3, it is noted that this is a problem that we may have to face, that we will have to face. Very often, it is necessary to learn from a distribution of example that is somewhat different from those on which the final system will be evaluated. So, say I am going to bring this world champion of checkers, but he is going to play checkers against my computer. But then I never had access to this person, right, during my training. So the way he is going to play is not a distribution, is not a data that I could have anticipated in ahead of the game, right? So my distribution of training example, my training example is going to be different than my testing example. Okay. So very often it will be necessary to learn from a different distribution and apply it to a different distribution. For example, let me give one more example. I want to see whether some tiger I can track in the forest using a camera. Okay, these are camera traps that are set up in forest. So I will train in lots of different images of tigers, but this particular tiger that I am trying to identify, this tiger is not there in my database, right? So the strip of this tiger would be different than all the tigers that I have in my database. So my training and testing are going to be a bit different. And yeah, this is what I have. Say I have the data of uh, government schools, right? So the student of government schools, I have this. What is their parents' education? What is the number of family members? And whether they are in a relationship, lots of different data. And finally I have the grade of the student. This is the data I have from government schools. So I am going to use this data to predict the grade of students. Now if I apply my model, if I use this data from government schools to predict the result of students of private school, so the distribution is going to be different. Okay, maybe there is going to be some socio-economic factor because of which the distribution is going to be different. But then uh, it is very easy to imagine that the data of one distribution will not generalize to other distribution. So if I make some model machine learning system to predict grades of students of government school, I cannot directly use it to predict grades of students of private schools. There might be other factors involved. Okay, so yeah, this is the problem. But it will often be necessary to use this. Say uh, data of private schools is not available. Then what do? We have to use the data of government schools. In practice, it is often necessary to learn from a distribution of example that is somewhat different from those on which the final system would be evaluated. Okay. Uh, yeah. So such situations are problematic because mastery of one distribution of example will not necessarily lead to strong performance over some other distribution. So I have say created a system that predicts y. Uh, this is y, this is x. that predicts y given x on this data, I cannot use the same model to predict on this graph. So if I train on this graph, I cannot use it to predict on this graph. Okay, but then if I have to do it, if I only have this data, then I have no other way, but I have to use the model train on this data and apply it on this data. But then the performance is going to suffer. All right. So this is one problem that you have to understand, that the distribution of test and train has to be same. Okay, for good performance, but it may so happen that our data on which we have to train, the data that is available to us for training may not directly fit into testing. Okay, and the final point is most current theory of machine learning rests on the critical assumption that the distribution of training examples is identical to the distribution of test example. Yeah. So the assumption is that my training example is going to be same as the testing example, but then this is the assumption that we have reached a compromise and that we make. This is not necessarily true, as we just spoke, right? Our testing data, training data might not be similar, may not fit into our training data. Okay, they may have very different shape. For example, the first example that I gave you, these photos of trucks were taken at night. That was our training data, but photos of trucks taken at day was given as testing data. Very different distribution, very different training example, training and testing data. All right. So this is one factor that we have to think about when training this, creating these learning systems. Okay, the distribution of training and testing example preferably should be the same. Okay, next is target function. The checkers playing program can generate the legal moves from any board state. So yeah, given some board state, the program can tell me what are the legal moves. For example, say this is the board. I have a white and a black here. Okay, so this cannot go here. This cannot go here. Okay, this on the other hand. Okay, let me put more in here. More boxes. This on the other hand can go here. Okay, so this is not a legal move. This is not a legal move. This is a legal move. Right? This is legal. This and this not legal. Okay, so a very simple program can tell us what are the legal moves given any board state, right? We don't have to worry too much about this. This is going to be a very simple program. Just give out the legal moves. So what do we have? We have a computer program that can generate the legal moves from any board state. Now what do we have to do? Our learning system is going to do what? Out of all these legal moves, which is the base legal move? Okay, the program, that is our learning program, needs only to learn how to choose the base move from among these legal moves. Okay, now the most obvious choice for the type of information to be learned is a program or function that chooses the base move for any given board state. So yeah, let us talk about this function. So this is the function that can be learned, right? It is choose move. So this function is going to take some board state, okay, and it is going to give me what is the move that I have to make given this board state, right? Uh, so yeah, this is one way of thinking about this problem, right? So there is going to be a function. This function is going to take this board state, and then it is going to give me what is the move that I have to uh, make given this board state, right? This is one way of representing this problem. So let choose move b to m. This is from the set b. This is from the set m. Set of uh, board states and set of moves. Okay. So let b to m be the function that accepts as input any board from the rest of the from the set of legal board states and produces as output some move from the set of legal moves m. So it is going to take some board state and it is going to give me some output, some move that I have to make. Now the thing is that this is a very difficult task, okay, because it's a very indirect learning experience. So which move should I make is difficult to calculate. Okay, uh, yeah. So that is what I have. So you understand this representation? What are we doing? We are trying to uh, represent our problem as a function. Okay, so one function that we can choose is this choose move. It is going to take what? It is going to take the board, some board state, and it is going to give what? It is going to give the move that I am going to make. Okay, so some board, some move. This is the set of board states. This is the set of moves, legal move. Okay. Now this is difficult. We have already established that. So let us look at something easy. Okay. This is the alternative target function. Here what is going to happen? This function v, we are calling it v, is going to take some board state and it is going to give me a real number. Okay. This number is going to tell me how good this board state is. Okay. So I have say when playing the game, I have I am in some board state B1. Okay. And now at this state, say I can make three legal moves: M1, M2, and M3. Okay. And after making this legal moves, say after making legal move M1, I reach the board state B2. By making legal move M2, say I reach B3. By making this legal move M3, say I reach B4. Okay. So from B1 I can reach B2, B3 or B4, right? I can make three legal moves and using these three moves I can go to B2, B3 and B4. Now out of B2, B3 and B4, which one am I going to choose? Say B3 is the best move that I should make. Now this function V is going to give me this. I am going to put V of B2, I am going to find V of B3 and I am going to find V of B4. Okay, so V of B2 say gives me 80, V of B3 say gives me 90 and V of B4 say gives me 85. Right. So from here I can see that V of B3 gives me the highest score. Alright. So using this I can say that from my board state B1 I should choose move M2 to reach board state B3. Okay. So yeah, this is one more representation. This is a bit easier because now instead of telling the move, we are given some score of some board state, right? So I am going to find a score for all legal board states that I can reach from my current state, and then I can find a score of each of them, and that is how I am going to go ahead and choose which is the board state that I am going to take. Alright. So let V board state to some real number be the target function that maps any legal board state from the board set A. B to some real value r. The function v, the target function v should do what? It should assign higher score to better board state. So in our example we started with b1 and then we reached b2, b3, b4. b3 we said was the best one, so it was given the highest score. So the better a board state is, the higher it should be its score. Now let us think about how to assign this score. Okay, if b is the final board state, okay, and the game is won, then give value, this v of b should be equal to 100. Okay, if b is what? If b is a final board state and we have won the game. If b is the final board state and we have lost the game, then the value, this function v should assign to this board state b the value minus 100. Okay, on the other hand, if this board if we have uh, resulted in a draw, okay, if the game is drawn, then v of b should be equal to 0. It's neither good like 100 not bad like minus 100. Okay, so it resulted in a draw. Very simple, these three rules. Let us look at the final rule. Okay, in case it is not one of these three, okay, then what should be the value of this board state b? Say board state b is not the final, then b is going to be equal to v b bar. Okay, and what is b bar? Let me explain with a image. Say this is board state b, then I am going to reach some other board state b1, then some other board state b2, then so on until I reach a board state in which I am either going to win or lose or draw. Okay, now whether I win or lose or draw, I am going to call this the b bar. Okay, now whether I win or lose or draw, using these three rules, okay, v bar is going to have the score 100 if it wins, minus 100 if we lose, okay, 100 if we win and minus 100 if we lose, and it is going to have a score of 0 if we end up in a draw. Okay, so yeah, this is how we are going to give a score to b bar. And then what is the score that we are going to give to b? We are talking about, of course, giving score to this board b, right? And then playing this game optimally, opposing that I am playing optimally and my opponent is also playing optimally. I am going to play this game and ultimately reach this b bar, and b bar is going to be the final board state. So b bar is either going to be a win, or it is going to be a lose, or it is going to be a draw. Okay, so either we are going to win or we are going to lose or we are going to result in a drawn game. So based on one of these we are going to give the score 100 or minus 100 or 0 to b bar. Okay, so whatever result we give to b bar is the result that b is going to get, right? So this is what point 4 is telling us. This is the representation of this v. What is the v? This is how v is defined. Alright, simple. Now the representation is very simple. I hope everyone understood it. But then there are problems with this representation. Of course, things that are too simple usually have problem. So what is the problem? Apart from this final board state, that is your these three cases. Okay, case 1, 2 and 3, where uh, these are the trivial cases. Your board state is the final board state. You either win or lose or have a drawn board. So if you have these three cases, then very easy to assign score to the board. But then if it is not a final stage, then what do we have to do? We have to play out the entire game from this board state up to the final board state. Then in the final board state, I am going to find out whether it is 100 minus 100 and 0, and then go back and give this board state, starting board state, this value 100 or minus 100 or 0. Okay, so yeah, what is the problem? For each of the non-trivial board state, trivial board state is other ones that are the final board states. So non-trivial board states, what is going to happen? We have to play out the game to assign scores to these states, right? So this is computationally intractable, means this is going to take lots of time, not efficient computationally. So these kind of definition are called non-operational definition. We cannot compute essentially the value of v. Okay, finding the value of v perfectly is going to be very difficult. So these are called non-operational definition. On the other hand, what is our target? Our target is to find operational definition. Okay, our target is to find definition that is not 100% correct, not 100% accurate, but at least we are going to find in less time. Okay, in some tractable amount of time. Now, we often expect learning algorithm to acquire only some approximation of the target algorithm. So this is what I was saying. We do not want to find the exact value. Finding the exact function v is going to take lots of time, right? So what we are going to make a compromise. We are going to find this value of v uh, using some algorithm. We are going to find some approximate value of v, not the exact value, but some approximate, some nearby value, okay, with some degree of error. So we are going to, instead of trying to find a function v, we are instead going to find some other function v bar. Okay, so this is still in your book you will find v circumflex, but I could not find this image to put in your slide. I could not find this Unicode character, so I'm instead using this over here. Alright, so we often expect learning algorithm to acquire only some approximation. Okay, so we cannot find exact function v, we are going to find some approximate function v bar. Okay, and for this reason the process of learning is also called function approximation. Alright, so yeah, this is something that we have. We are going to, we want to learn this function v, but this is non-operational, that is it is going to take lots of time, computationally intractable. So we are going to find a function v bar that is very similar to v but not exactly same. Okay, so this v bar is going to have some error. V, we assumed, is the ideal function that does not have error, that gives me the perfect, given some board state b, it is going to give me some value and this is going to be the perfect value. But then v bar, okay, given some board state v is going to give me some value, this is not equal to the perfect value. So this would have been the correct value, but it is giving me something with some amount of error. Alright, so yeah, this is something that we have to do. We have to choose a approximate function that is somehow somewhat near the ideal target function. Okay, so yeah, this is what we have. So what is the target function? Okay, there is some way that we have to represent this function. Once again, let us remind ourselves what was our target function. Target function was v. It would have taken some board state b and it would have given me some real number, right? Now this is out of hand. We cannot calculate this efficiently. So we are going to find some approximate function v bar. It is also going to take some both state b and is going to give me some real number. This real number is going to tell me how good this both state is. If it is very high, that means it's a good both state. If it is very low, that means it's a bad both state. Okay, so this is what we have. Now, how is the real number going to come? What is before we talk about what is the real number that is going to come, let us talk about how do we represent this both state actually. Okay, so this function is going to be given some parameter and then it is going to return some real number, right? What is the parameter that we are going to give? Are we going to give the entire 8 by 8 matrix, right? Representation. So we can give, say, all the blank spaces are filled with 2. Wherever I have a white piece, I can or one color 1, I am going to write 1. Whenever I have color 2, I am going to write 0. Okay, and these are all blank. So this could be one matrix representation that I can give to my function, right? But then what is the problem with this? This is very good. Uh, First, before I go to the problem, let me tell you the advantage. This is good because it is giving me the full details of the board. Okay, this is very expressive and this is going to give me the exact situation that the board has. But then uh, what will happen is that if we have so much data, okay, if my parameter to this target function has lots of data, then what will happen is that it will very easily overfit the data. Okay, we don't want that. So we are, instead of going to give the entire 8 by 8 matrix, okay, we are going to instead give only 6 parameters, 6 numbers. These 6 number are x1, x2 up to x6, where x1 means number of black pieces on the board, x2 means number of red pieces on the board, x3 number of black kings on the board, x4 number of red kings on the board, x5 number of black pieces threatened by red, and x6 is the number of red pieces threatened by black. Okay, so what do we have here? Previously, the more expressive input parameter, that is your entire board represented as a 8 by 8 matrix, would have had 64 numbers, right? 64 integers would have been given to this function. Now if we would have given 64 integers, then this would be a large input uh, vector, input array. All right, now there one digression from the topic. I am using words like vector. You will find me using words like feature. All these words we will learn about these words very soon, right, in module 1 itself. But then I am trying not to use this word right now in this lecture because I am trying to make it as easy as you. We did not officially enter machine learning yet. Okay. So as we look at more data, we will look at the current terminologies that are used in the industries. All right. So yeah, this is what we have. We could have given the input as a 8 by 8, that is 64 different numbers, right? But instead we are choosing to give only 6 number. Our input would be what? Our input would be this 6 number, x1, x2 up to x6. Right? What do each of this number mean? This, we just talked about it. So instead of 64 number, we are going to give only 6 number. What is wrong with giving 64 number? This is a very large number of input, and if we input parameters, so if we give this large number of input parameters, then what is going to happen? We will need lots of training example, okay, in order to learn this target function properly. Okay. So the choice of representation has a crucial trade-off. On one hand, we wish to pick a very expressive representation like this to allow representing as close an approximation as possible to the target function. So we want to give such a expressive uh, representation. But on the other hand, the more expressive the representation, the more training data the program will require in order to choose between alternative hypotheses it can represent. So the more bigger your this input parameter is, the more training data you are going to need. Okay, so that is one problem that we have. Now, uh, so we are not going to go with this 64 parameter. We are going to go with this parameter, x1 up to x6. All of these are integers, and this is what we do. Instead of 64, we have chosen 6 numbers. Now, what is the representation of the target function? Okay, v bar given this x1 up to x6 is going to give me some real number. How is it going to calculate this real number? It is going to calculate the real number using this formula. Okay, so I have w0 plus w1 x1 plus w2 x2 plus so on up to w6 x6. Alright, this is a simple equation. Okay, this w0, w1, w2 up to w6 are all coefficients. Alright, of this equation. This is a linear equation. Okay, and what we have done, we have created a linear combination of all these parameters. All these x1 up to x6 are combined using linear combination. You know what is linear combination? Linear combination means a mm, line or plain line thing. There is no polynomial or anything that will give a curve to the graph, right? Essentially, this is the equation of a uh, five-dimensional uh, hyperplane in a six-dimensional space, right? Yeah. So if this does not make any sense, what I just said, ignore it completely. For this lesson, at least in this lecture, it does not matter. So this is the equation using which I am going to represent my function. Okay. And what is the learning task right now? This learning task is to figure out what will be the value of W0, W1 up to W6. Okay. So this is what we have. Next, after we have represented, so we have done what till now? Till now we have figured out how are we going to find this value for both state, what is the function that we are going to use, and then for each what is the input parameter, how is the input training going to come from. For example, is it going to be direct or indirect? We have chosen indirect. And then is the teacher going to give the example? Is the computer going to ask the teacher whenever it is confused, or is the computer going to learn everything on its own? We have decided it is going to learn on its own. That the next problem was the distribution. We have assumed that the distribution of test and train data is going to be same. Then we have talked about how to go ahead and choose the target function. We decided, at first we talked about this idea of choosing this function that takes a board state and gives the next move. Then we said that this is very difficult to calculate. So instead we have decided to choose another function that takes a board state and tells you how good this board state is, right? So later on, when I have choices of different moves, I am going to find out what is the board state that would lead me into given this move, and I am going to find out how good each of these board states are. Out of all these board states that I can go to, which is the base board state, and I am going to go to that board state. So choosing the base board state given all these legal moves is going to be done using this function v. Then we talked about how calculating v is a intractable task, is a very uh, heavy task, okay, very computationally inefficient task. So instead we discussed that we are going to uh, not find this perfect function v. Instead we are going to find some approximate function, okay, that is almost as good as v, but we assume that v does not have any error, but our function v bar, our approximate function, is going to give a result that is almost similar to v, but then with some error, okay. So this is function approximation. We settle for this. We are going to only find a approximate function. We cannot find the ideal function. So how did we decide to represent this function, this approximation function? Using this equation. Okay, this equation of a line. Okay, so this equation is going to ultimately this w, all this w1 w0 w1 w2 up to w6, and all this x1 up to x6. This x1 up to x6 are all integers. This w0 to w6 are all floating values, okay, floating point numbers. So ultimately I am going to get some, this equation is going to give me some floating point number, right? So this is a floating point plus floating point. A integer multiplied using a with a floating point is a floating point. So if I add lots of floating point numbers, I'm going to get a floating point number. So ultimately this is going to give me what? This is going to give me a real number as expected. My function is, of course, it would have taken some both state and given me a real number. Okay, and this equation is giving me a real number. So this is where we are at right now. We have decided to represent this game as a this approximate function as a equation. This equation that is going to give me a real number. More technically, this is a linear equation. Okay, but then don't worry about that. We will talk about this in module 2. Okay, the final task that we now have to do is we have to learn this coefficient w0, w1 up to w6. This, learning the value of this is going to be the ultimate uh, machine learning task that we have to do, the training that we have to do. Okay, here we know what is the value of x1, x2, x6, right? These are the definition. Okay, x1 is the number of black pieces, x2 is the number of red pieces, and so on. So we know what is x1 up to x6, but we don't know this w0, w1 up to w6. Now, of course, this has to be, this w0 to w6 have to be values that can give me this correct answer. Okay, so if this x1 and x2 up to x6 corresponds to a good both state, then this real number that I get by multiplying them with these w's and adding them up should be high. If this x1 to x6 corresponds to a bad board state, then this number that I get after multiplying with all these w's and then adding them up should be a low number, so should be a small number. Alright, so this w0 to w1 should be chosen in such a way that when multiplied with this x1 to x6 of good numbers, I should get a good value, and then when I am multiplying with that of a bad board, I should get a bad value, a low value. Alright, so this is what I have. So now the last task is learning. How do we learn? So I will need something. Given this board, I will need this value. Let me call it vtrain output. So given this board, how good is this board? Okay, so there's this one thing that I need. I need this training value for B. So in order to learn the target function V bar, we require a set of training example, each describing a specific board state and the training value. So this is what I will have. I will have lots of boards, say B1, then I will have B2, B3, some B100. Okay, so along with B100, what am I going to have? I am going to have some value indicating how good is this board state. If it's a good board state, I am going to have a high number over here. If it's a bad board state, I am going to have a small number over here. So this I am indicating with this notation vtrain B100. All right. So yeah, this is what I have. Now how do I calculate this vtrain B100? If you look at your book, you will see vtrain B is essentially vtrain B minus V bar of successor of B. So essentially I'm going to use this uh, current learning system in order to predict what is the next move that I am going to make, and based on this prediction I'm going to play this game, and we are going to look at what is the result and then give a feedback that would ultimately inform me how to uh, how good is this step, and then using this I am going to improve my learning. Okay, so essentially I am going to keep on playing and then I will learn from that. So this loop will take place. If you look at your book, this is the exact function that you will see, and then this iteration that you will see will be something called least mean square. Okay, so we will not talk about this in this class. Okay, this LMS and gradient descent are something that we are going to see when we look at this chapter called uh, look at this topic called linear regression. Okay, so when that topic comes up, we are going to look at this topic look at these things in detail. But today we are not going to go into this depth. We are going to end this class with this. Okay, by talking about what needs to be done. We are not going to actually go ahead and do this thing. Okay, so this is what I have. My one of the example data. So I said you are going to have board. You are going to have board state, and you are going to have some value, right? So this is an example of such a board state and a value. Now in previous chapter we already talked about how we are going to represent board state. Are we going to represent board as a 68 cross 8 matrix? We decided against that. Instead we decided to represent the board using 6 numbers. These are your x1 up to x6. So say x1 is equal to 3, x2 is equal to 0, x3 is equal to 1, x4 equal to 0, x5 equal to 0, x6 equal to 0. So what does this mean? This means that there is no uh, red pieces, no red pieces in the board, no red pieces in danger. That means there is no red piece in the board at all. What does this mean? This means that black has won the game. Okay, if I am playing with these black pieces, that means I would have won the game. And because I would have won the game, I would have a value of equal to 100 plus 100. Plus 100 is a board state that wins the game. Minus 100 is one that loses the game. 0 is one that draws the game. Here I have a state where I have won the game, right? So this is an example of a board state. This data set, if we had this data set, then this would have looked like this. In fact, I would have x1, x2, x3 up to x6 and v3, right? This would be 3 0, 1 0, 0 0, and this would be 100. And in this way I will have lots of data, and on this data I am going to do least mean square, and this least mean square, after doing this least mean square, I am going to get these values of W0 up to W1 to W6 that I will ultimately use in this equation to find this value given some both state. What should be the, how good is that both state? Okay. Now this is all for today. Today we have talked about how to uh, what are the steps that needs to be taken when designing a learning system. Okay, so several things that needs to be thought about. So all these things we discussed. Okay, so in future classes we will not go into too much depth of these topics. We will I will assume that you understood today's class. If not, then you can go ahead and leave your doubt in the comment section below. You can of course reach out to me and ask your doubt. But then understanding today's process of how to design a machine learning system is very necessary. In future classes, we are going to assume that you understand all this, and we are going to assume that you are simply interested in this how to design the learning system. Okay. Uh, so yeah, that is what we have today. We talked about how to uh, design a learning system. Right? Essentially, we did not talk about what is the performance measure. How did we choose the performance measure? Okay, here the performance measure was very straightforward. Percentage of game won in the when playing with some opponent. All right. So task is also very simple. Performance measure is also very simple. Predefined over here. We just talked a lot about uh, how to get this training experience. Then how do we take this training experience, and then given this training experience, how do we design a system? How do we design a learning system that would take this board state as a parameter and give me my next move? Okay, so whether I did it directly using this function choose move that takes a board and gives the next move, or I did it indirectly using this function v that took a board state and told us how good is this board state. So out of these two, there could be two way of doing this thing. Okay, then that would we went for this target function. Then we talked about how to what are some problems with this ideal target function. So we talked about approximating this function using this v bar, and then we talked about how you are going to represent this v bar. Okay, we decided to represent it as a linear combination of the input parameters. So essentially we did this equation, V bar is equal to W naught plus W1 x1 plus W2 x2 up to W6 x6. Alright, and then ultimately we ended the class by talking about what is the next step that we have to do. In the next step we have to learn this value of W0, W1 up to W6, right? So this is how we design a learning system. This ends today's class. Reach out to me, ask me your doubt. You can of course, if you have problem asking doubt in the comment section, if you don't think that you will get a reply, then you can of course ask your doubts in the live classes. Okay. In the next video, we are going to talk about the three types of learning. Okay, essentially supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. Then we are going to talk in depth about what is supervised learning. We are going to see that there are two type of supervised learning. One is classification, another is regression. Then we are going to look at a few examples of unsupervised learning, essentially clustering, anomaly detection, association, and autoencoder. Then we are going to look at what is reinforcement learning. Ultimately, at a later point in this course, this checkers game that we talked about, we are going to actually code a program that is going to learn how to play checkers, and we are not going to do this using supervised learning or unsupervised learning, essentially unsupervised learning, but then uh, using reinforcement learning, right? There is lots of difference between the three techniques: supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement. So yeah, uh, this is what we are going to talk about in the next class. And in the next class, after talking about what is what is supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement, we are going to talk about what is classification. Okay, and then when talking about classification, we are going to talk about this performance measure P in terms of classification. There are lots of different algorithms for classification, and all of these algorithms can be evaluated using lots of different uh, this performance measure. Some of these performance measure are going to be accuracy, precision, recall, F measure, balanced accuracy, and Matthews correlation coefficient. Okay, all these performance measure would follow from something known as confusion matrix. So we will talk about what is confusion matrix, and then for using this confusion matrix, we are going to figure out what each of these performance measure in the context of classification actually mean. So this would be our content for the next video. Thank you for watching this video, and see you in the next video.